going to call this Teaching and Learning Committee meeting to order on May 5th at 5:55 p.m. Okay, start with roll call. Tracy Pollock.
Here.
Jeff Boyer.
Here.
And Higginbotham, I am here. All right, next item on the agenda is the revisions and approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Tracy and a second by Jeff. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes. All right, next item on the agenda is 4A, approval of the March 3rd, 2025 committee minutes.
Motion to approve the March 3rd, 2025 Teaching and Learning Committee minutes.
I will second that. Sharon, to your right.
I have a motion by Tracy and a second by Jeff. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that passes. All right, next item on the agenda is item 5, reports and updates. Item A, we have a curriculum review update, and that we're going to go to Jake Nazia.
All right.
Uh-oh.
While Dr. Ryder gets that up and running.
Okay.
The purpose of this update is twofold. One, I think when we were going through the last curriculum review, there was a lot of focus in on the selection of the resource. We spent a lot of time talking about the ELA resource that we selected, which was Wonders, and at the 6-8 level Study Sync. So I think we put a lot of focus in on moving towards that resource. Part of that was at the elementary and the middle school level, we didn't have a consistent resource that was being used with the implementation of Act 20. We were required to have high quality resources that students had access to. So a lot of the focus was on that portion of a curriculum review. Tonight what I wanted to do is to provide you a little bit of an update of the work that all of our teams that have been in a curriculum review are doing, but I'm highlighting social studies, and I'm highlighting the kind of the nuts and bolts of the beginning steps of a curriculum review, which is a deep focus on standards and how we get to the point to which we prioritize standards. The importance of that is, and if you look at what we did with Wonders, even prior to moving down the direction of selecting a resource, we prioritize standards. Those prioritized standards are now what our parents see on the report cards when students get an update about how well they're progressing. So the literacy portion of the report card has been redesigned for our elementary students, and they've been redesigned around the prioritized standards. So this is a crucial step because it kind of guides the work from here on out, and it determines where we go in terms of resources or what we would move to. So this is something that I highlighted for my teams, and I think it's important for them to understand the distinction between these three things because sometimes they're used interchangeably. So when we talk about standards, we're defining what students should know and be able to do at each grade level, and they set what our learning goals are. When we talk about curriculum, that's really talking about what we develop in terms of UBD. So what are the big things that we want students to know? How will we assess them? How will we know that they know it? And then how do we respond to student learning? So what are the plans that we develop so that students learn the outcomes that we're looking for? And then the last piece of it is the resources. So resources can be lots of things. Wonders is obviously a resource that we purchased, but a lot of times when we talk about curriculum reviews, people kind of jump to, or the thought is that we're moving towards, we're reviewing resources. And that's our curriculum, but that's not really what this is. When we talk about our curriculum review, we look at what are the established goals that we're looking at, that we've defined in UBD, how well are we meeting those goals, and what adjustments do we need to make.
In the spirit of Mike Lowe, UBD.
UBD.
If you don't know that by now.
I do.
Lu-
For all the new
luckily for
people
Kim,
that
For the viewers at home.
This is for Jeff because
I know they're home.
Mr. Boyer just joined us. So
Yeah.
UBD is understanding by design. It's a process that's been pretty well established in the field of education, where we talk about backwards design. So understanding by design, we start with what we want students to understand, and then from there we design our lessons, how we're going to assess them, and then how they're going to learn that content.
And this also comes into play when we're going to be talking eventually about the state standards.
Yep. So every year we readopt the standards prior to the start of the school year. And this kind of highlights the importance of those standards and then how we use those standards to articulate a curriculum. So in phase 1 in analysis understanding, this can last 1 to 2 years typically. The big pieces of this is we start talking about a shared vision for the future direction of the curricular area. I've included the K-5 social studies vision in here so you can see what that is. We study the current state of the curriculum. So what we're really looking for is how well are we meeting the state standards currently? What are the resources that we have? What are teachers using in their classrooms? What is our scope and sequence like? We look at what the current state is. And then the last bit of that phase 1 is we start talking about prioritized standards. There is some learning that our teachers do when they engage in the curriculum review process, and that's important for developing this vision. So when you read that vision, you can start to see some of the things that have been highlighted by our teachers as here are some key pieces of what social studies should be. So it's talking about civic responsibility. It talks about the crucial areas of social studies, that being history, cultures, government, geography, and economics. And they're also talking about building an understanding of our students and how they can engage with their communities. So this is what those teams have been working on. So the key actions, you've heard me talk about a little bit of what these key actions are. So we're talking about conducting a comprehensive analysis of the existing curriculum, and then we're trying to figure out what the gap is between our existing curriculum and what standards are asking of our students. This is one of the reasons why last year I tried to align our curriculum review process with what the state has provided in terms of updates to standards, because that's the most logical time that you conduct this gap analysis. When new standards come out, we take a look at what we've been doing prior and how well they meet the current standards. Sometimes when you look at that, there hasn't been a major overhaul to the standards, so the curriculum review is really reinforcing, yeah, we're doing a good job, but what are the ways in which our students are performing? We look at some of their data to say, yep, it turns out that there are some gaps that we have and some things we'd like to improve, so that curriculum review might be really small in terms of its scope and its goals, whereas with the reading curriculum review, there was a major overhaul that was taking place, and we were changing how students were engaging with reading and how they were learning the skills associated with that. Chris is just cooking, he's moving me
Sorry,
along
you
here.
want me to go?
That's okay. No, it's fine.
There's a lot of words up there.
The piece that I'd like to highlight for you tonight, one of the key actions that's outlined here in phase 1 is the review of relevant district adopted standards and how we prioritize those. In addition to prioritization, we work as a team to develop an understanding of what those standards are. And I want to walk you through how you can take a standard, read the standard, and then articulate what that looks like in terms of what we want our students to be able to do.
Okay, I can go.
Thanks, Chris.
All right.
So this is, the standard is what's written on the top there. So it says Wisconsin students will evaluate government decisions and their impact on individuals, businesses, markets, and resources, essentially the role of government. Underneath that, where it says Econ 4.A, that's what in our standards they call learning priority, and under that is a performance indicator. So that's what our K2 students are supposed to be able to know and be able to do. Now when you read that, hypothesize how goods get to a local community and market, this is maybe very clear at a K2 level what that standard is talking about, but we want to make sure that once it moves to the classroom level, that across all of the classrooms that interact with this standard, they understand what the goal is for our students to know and be able to do. So what we do is we start to articulate that for our teachers. Thanks, Dr. Reuter. So you can see where we take that learning priority and we start breaking it out into what we want students to know, be able to do, and then what are some of the essential questions that we want students to be able to ask when they engage with this standard. On the next slide.
Do you want to,
Or in,
anyone have questions on this? I just reiterate Jake's point that, you know, a standard is a standard on a piece of paper, but the process that he takes his teams through break it down into those essential questions so that it's more applicable and malleable in the classroom, and how do we make this come alive so that kids can retain knowledge and also apply knowledge?
The key point of this is we develop clarity around that statement. It creates a scope of what the standard is talking about, and it creates clear learning goals for our teachers. So this, what are students supposed to know, be able to do, that's part of stage 1 of UBD. So
this is where we move some ambiguity out of it and provide the interpretation we expect our staff to use,
absolutely.
100%.
which is key to some topics, actually every topic, but
Yeah.
not
So
only from a cross-district, right, and vertical alignment standpoint, but
yeah, year to year. And I think this is where just buying a product and saying, okay, go teach, you lose this focus, right? So this is the important ground level foundational work to understand what are we actually teaching and why, and then how do we do it, and then what's the right program, whether it's Wonders that we adopted or Bridges, or in this case Social Studies, whatever program we go with, that's going to support this information.
Now, what you'll notice on the 3.5 social studies standard, that standard remains the same. So Wisconsin students will evaluate government decisions and their impact on individuals, business, markets, and resources. You'll see that the learning priorities stayed the same, economic systems and allocations of resources. And then underneath that, what you can see is change is the performance indicator. So it grows in complexity now because we've moved to our 3.5 students. So exactly the same process that you can see here for stage 1 of understanding by design. We take that and we outline it for students again. What are the critical things that we want students to know and be able to do? This is used on multiple levels. So for every single one of the learning priorities, K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12, we've outlined what students are supposed to know and be able to do. And from here, once we've developed that clarity around the learning priority, that's where our teachers start to determine what's the priority for these units. It helps us develop a coherent scope and sequence, so when teachers look at this, this is a 3-5 band, they can determine, one, is this standard something that we do want to spend a lot of time on, we want to make sure that students have a good understanding of. Does this standard fit with other ones so that we can package them together to create a unit? And the last thing that's not shown on here is we talk about the level of complexity that's associated with the standard. The reason why we do that is it creates a natural boundary for how far we expect students to go in grades 3-5 associated with that standard. It creates a natural boundary for this is what students are supposed to be able to do. And then when we talk about assessment, which is the next layer to this, we know how deeply to assess students, so that when we get to, and it is inherent to all of our standards, but it comes in at different levels. When we're talking about tracing the chain of supply needed for a product, there is some analysis that happens there when we start talking about a product and what are the different pieces that are associated with it. So there is some depth to this standard that we want to make sure is maintained when teachers have this, so that our students are exposed to a rigorous curriculum. And that becomes even more important as we develop all the way up when we're talking about 9-12, to make sure that we're asking our students to engage in the deeper levels of learning that are associated with the standard versus something that might be surface. That's it. What
So-
questions do you have for me?
So when we look at the state standards that come, then we have to prioritize those standards and knock those down into the ones that, are for our district. And then from there, then we do the UBD. So from there, okay, let me start over. So does our district have every subject, every grade level? Do we have UBD for all of the state standards?
Not for every state standard. Each one of our curricular areas, they have UBD documents that they've been working on. As we go through a review, they're being exposed to a process that is a bit different than what was used previously to create them. So each iteration of UBD, you're gonna get a deeper level of complexity in terms of what you're going to see. So, for social studies, stage 1, you're gonna see a lot of what you just saw on, the one example that I've highlighted. What we're asking teachers to articulate in stage 1 of UBD is going to look like what you just saw, so that there are clear learning expectations that are there. This isn't just important for teachers, but it's important for kids, because when we show them the target and we're very clear about the direction that they're going, it's a lot easier for students to get there. And when they have those clear expectations that are there, not only do we maintain rigor, but we make sure that there's a common expectation across our classrooms that all students are moving towards.
So I think to summarize to your question, Ms. Higginbotham, is we have UBD in place for all of our subject areas K-12. The depth and complexity that Jake just talked about is not there in all of them from the understanding, because he has not taken every curricular area through a review. Will we get there? Yes. Do we have structure in place? Sure, but the depth is different, and we're working through that because we can't do every curriculum review
Well, and it's
all
just,
at
it's
once,
a
right?
huge task
It
to
is,
take
right?
on,
You've
obviously.
seen, right? You
Yeah.
have the binders of the standards, right?
Right,
That's-
right.
it's a lot of
So
work.
it's impressive what has been done, and obviously we're still working on it.
And
But
one
then-
of the, one of the things that we've built into PD Days, the 612 group, we've embedded some of the same protocols that we use in a curriculum review in the work that they're doing on PD Days, so that those teams are also asking the same questions that we're working on when they're doing the deep dive on a curriculum review is, what do we want students to know? How do we know that they know it? And how do we prioritize standards? So some of the learning that teachers have engaged in this year is that idea of prioritization. And then when you prioritize it, how do you break it apart into the critical indicators of what we want students to know and be able to do and what those standards mean? Then once we go through a curriculum review, we take those documents and we go through this process all over again. And what we'll do is we'll take those existing UBDs that's part of the current state, analyze them, see how well they hold up to what our expectations are once we go through that second reading of standards, and then we start to look for those gaps. Where do we need to increase the rigor? Where are places where we might be teaching something that's not within the standards? And then determine what are the next best ways that we can improve that curriculum.
And to Mr. Eward's point, and Jake's point, the 612 work on those PD days, we're building vertical alignment. We're having our 612 teachers content-specific work together, which hasn't happened for years here, to understand what's that scope and sequence, which is important.
I'll discuss kind of a couple different points here. I think it's important to highlight, we saw a survey, and there was some disgruntled responses towards
PD.
professional development. Well, some people review that as professional development or personal development, and right now this district is in a state of need of teamwork professional development, and that's this work. Now, it might not be specific to one's personal development in their profession. It is important that the team starts at this baseline, and we understand that, and we understand the staff is all over the board with that. So some it's way behind them, others it's this huge uplift for them. But the support in an appropriate fashion for them. So we do have some of that going on here. The other is when we prioritize a standard, it's usually, my understanding, we're looking at some deficiencies we're seeing throughout the district, performance-wise, and then we'll isolate some standards we believe, Jake and his team believe, would uplift that performance that the students need, and that's how we highlight some of this. But that can only happen as we go through each curricular review to this level. That happens across a lot of things where we can do right away, but to this level, and then when citizens ask, well, what are you doing about X, Y, or Z, and this curriculum is questionable here or there, and sometimes it is, still, even though we've taken a lot of work, and it's highlighting that understanding by design and building out, removing that ambiguity of the state standard into what it means specific to this district, right? And now we're layering all of those things together, and it's a harder thing to understand. I've had this conversation for the last 3+ years now, and that's the work.
Well, I just think
that's
it's
going on.
the importance that Germantown is putting on the curriculum and making sure that we're meeting standards and that we keep reviewing it. It's not just a one-time thing, and that the depths that we
Yeah.
do go into. So, and I think that's why we wanted to bring this up tonight, is to just know that there's continuous work going on, whether it's, you know, the initial steps, or we keep reviewing to make sure that we're meeting those gaps. So-
It's a great topic to talk about. It touches a lot of work that's being done by these offices here, and understanding on our end in support of that.
You know, and the
Um,
teachers that put all the time in. And,
Absolutely.
you know, that's not easy just to come up with, you know.
Yeah, no, that's,
Any of
And
these.
Jake, how many teachers are on your review team?
It depends.
Well,
So,
elementary. I mean, I've been in
elementary
this
K-5,
room.
we've got 12 teachers that are a part of that group. We
So
try to
12
get
teachers across 4 schools, right?
Yep, so representation from those bands, K2, 3, 5, and we try to get it across all of the buildings. So yes, that was the last bit that I was gonna add, and I'm glad that you said it before me. I'm very grateful for the teachers who sign up to be a part of this. Some of them are recommended by their principals, but obviously they're choosing to be a part of the work. And I describe sometimes analyzing standards as an unpreferred task. It's not necessarily, teachers love planning lessons, they love delivering content to students, they love having kids engage in activities, and sometimes doing the deep dive into standards can be grueling, and when you're looking at 70+ learning priorities, sometimes that's a long afternoon for some teachers, but I very much appreciate the level and depth that our teachers go through to analyze these standards to make sure that there's a common understanding of these outcomes for kids. So I'm very appreciative to the work that our teams are doing to make sure that the end product is beneficial for our kids.
Well, and the importance of it too, that we've talked about with the aligning, so that you have, you know, the 4 elementary schools funneling into a middle school, and then you don't have some, you know, ahead here or behind here because we're teaching different things. So, and the first step is having the teachers on board with that, because they are, you know, involved in the process.
And
Instead
yeah.
of having it, you know, thrown at you, just do this. They're involved in the UVD, they're involved with the, you know.
it's more than just, more than just curriculum review, adoption, piloting. This is really the framework, the bedrock
Yeah.
of what all of that work is done on, and they are, I appreciate you highlighting it, they are absolutely involved in that. And it's work outside of their classroom responsibilities, which is an extended load of work for them to do, which is amazing that they pick it up and do it to this detail.
And we see the fruit of this labor when the depth that Jake's team, the curriculum review team, our teachers engage in. Last week, Mr. Ewert, Mr. Pollock, and Mr. Barney were on a visit at County Line when Governor Evers was here, and we walked into a kindergarten classroom. It's April, and kindergartners are reading fluently, all of them.
Independently,
right?
the entire room.
Independently. So you think about the work that was done through reading.
It was-
This mirrors that in social
Yeah.
studies. It was pretty amazing. Even Governor Evers went, whoa, this is pretty crazy. Like, this is amazing. But it takes this foundational work to really understand, be able to articulate the standards, engage in that work. So then we find the resource that supports that so that teachers can deliver high quality.
And some of his
teaching and learning.
questions to staff were around that, and this was the level of type of answers they were giving him
Yeah.
to it. It's,
So kudos to Jake's team and his department for replicating what we did through reading, and this is only going to be a twofold improvement when it comes to social studies curriculum as well.
Alright, so that was for informational purposes only, so thank you very much for sharing that and the discussion, so again,
Now it's
thanks
story
to.
time, right?
Alright, so unfinished business, item 6, we have none. We move on to new business, item 7, item A, AP chemistry resource. Back to Jake.
All right, so AP is slightly different than the process that we just talked about. So College Board creates outcomes that they've defined for our students, and those outcomes are then represented on the AP test. So when we talk about the AP resources, really what we're looking for is what resource best meets the needs of the outcomes that have been established by College Board. The advanced placement or College Board has the requirement that students are provided with a text with a copyright within the last 10 years. And earlier this summer, we had a book that came up, which was AP Psychology, and these would be the next 3 that are coming up in terms of our rotation of we need to update these resources. We do lean very heavily on our AP teachers to evaluate the resources. We do provide them with several options for them so that they can review how different topics are presented to kids, so that they can try to identify what's the best resource to help our students understand the content that College Board and the AP test requires of them. So for chemistry, Brian Mose was a critical member of the group deciding what might be the best resource for our kids. He does teach AP Chemistry and reviewed the text, and the text by Tro was determined by him to be the best resource to help our students meet the outcomes for AP Chemistry. This is not one that needs to go to finance because it's underneath the $15,000 limit. AP Psych was more, part of that's driven by the number of students who are involved in that. What I've done is I take a look at the enrollment of those classes to determine what would be the ideal amount of textbooks to purchase.
You guys all read that, right? We're good.
Yeah, yeah.
Light reading.
So thank you for,
Record show that book looks like it's never been open.
This is the one
No,
I had to review.
I think it's important to highlight, right, AP, and I apologize, but the AP courses aren't dictated internally, right? We do it. It's exactly what it is, and it's a reason why kids can earn college credits. The testing starting, I think, today, right, on it. So we have less options involved in it. We have to get that material to them, otherwise we're doing a disservice to the students. Unfortunately, we'll see where some of this AP stuff goes in the future. Hopefully it stays kind of where it's at and neutral and appropriate.
And I would share that our AP teachers are trained through College Board. So as
Yeah.
Jake said, Mr. Mose gave his insight because he's teaching that. He's been trained through College Board. So we're leaning on our professionals to help us make these decisions.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion with a positive recommendation to the full board to approve the adoption and purchase of Chemistry, a Molecular Approach, 6th edition by Nivaldo J. Tro for use in AP Chemistry.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Tracy, a second by Jeff. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes. All right, on to item B, AP Physics resource.
So much of the same that goes along with this one. Wes Hoops is our AP Physics teacher and reviewed several physics texts to determine which was the best suited for our physics program, and he has recommended Randall Knight's Physics for Scientists and Engineers, a Strategic Approach. Again, this one is under the $15,000 mark for Finance Committee, so this one wouldn't need their approval. AP Physics, the maximum number of students in a 5-year look back has been 45 students. These books both come from, all 3 resources that I'm proposing tonight are from Pearson, so that's a company that if we were to ever need additional copies, they would be something that we could get our hands on.
I guess with all these books, are these the same authors that we've used in the past, or are they pretty much all new?
They are not exactly the same authors that we've used before. I think for physics, we've used the Knight book previously.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. A motion with a positive recommendation to the full board to approve the adoption and purchase of Physics AP Edition for Scientists and Engineers, a Strategic Approach by Randall D. Knight for use in AP Physics.
Second?
A motion by Jeff, a second by Tracy. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that one passes. And our last item is, item 7C is AP Stats resource.
No book tonight?
No book for AP Stats. One thing that I will say, this was kind of highlighted by Mr. Ewart. AP does produce a list of recommended resources that go along with it. On there, you will find resources that aren't necessarily designed for AP. So the ones that we are looking at are the ones that are designed for AP. So there are some texts that do work, that cover all the same concepts that AP has determined would be necessary to learn it. But part of it is the way in which they put it together. Our teachers, many of our teachers are also AP reviewers, so they read for AP and understand what are on the tests. So that's another thing that they take into consideration when they're looking at the resources, is how well are these resources laid out in relation to what the AP expectations are. The last one that I'm recommending, I did not bring a copy of because this is a digital resource. So I worked with Mr. Canestra at the high school who teaches AP Stats. One of the benefits to the resource that he's recommending, it does come with a stats program that's built into it. So there are some very expensive stat programs that are out there when you're talking about the modeling and the statistical analysis that you need to do. This is built into the resource that he is recommending. I worked with him and discussed the physical versus non-physical materials for this, and he said that a digital resource would be sufficient for what he's doing with his students. So for AP Stats, it would be an online text plus the digital resource that comes along with it to do the statistical analysis.
Take a motion.
I like the
All
motion.
kids are taking all 3 classes. It's less weight in their backpack, so.
I'll go ahead and make the motion. I just have a technical question with it. Do we need to specify the 6-year license as part of the motion?
So that's, so the 6-year license, there's different ways to purchase it, and you get a little bit of a deal if you cast out. It's actually a significant deal if you do the 6-year versus the 1 year for it. Timeline-wise, it still fits within the scope of what AP is looking for, but when we purchase this license, so I'm purchasing this one slightly different because I'm doing it on a student-by-student basis. They will let you roll and prorate the license that goes along with it, but for this one I'm purchasing for currently what I have is the enrollment of our AP Stats. If we need to add additional licenses, we have the flexibility to do that, but the most cost-efficient way to do this, a 1-year license, is almost as much as what we're looking at for that 6-year license for this.
So do you want the 6-year in the motion?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't write that in there. That's why. Thanks, Mr. Pollack.
Motion with a positive recommendation to the full board to approve the adoption and purchase for a 6-year time frame of Modeling the World AP Edition plus My Math Lab for school with Pearson eText.
Second.
I have a motion by Tracy, a second by Jeff. Any questions? I guess I would just have one. As far as now it being a digital, would they potentially do updates every year, and then is that automatically, are we notified of if there's?
Yeah, the updates come along with what the changes are to College Board. So Mr. Barney and I had a brief conversation about kind of how the content of these courses may or may not change over time. So it's true that when we talk about physics, chemistry, and stats, a lot of that content, especially what students are learning in AP, is relatively stable. What does change is sort of what AP has highlighted as the information or the concepts that students need to know. So AP Physics is a good example where the big update to physics would be that fluids is now a part of the AP test, and it wasn't previously. So there was a unit that was added to it. So the resource, if this needed that update to add the additional unit, we would get any updates that come along with it. So we don't necessarily purchase the static license and it's exactly the same resource for the next 6 years. If there are updates to the AP test, we would get the updates with it.
It'd be interesting to have a review at the end of the year to see, you know, was it worthwhile? How many updates were there to see in the future if that would be, you know, kind of the direction that we would take, because having the ability to update those and keep current would be beneficial. See how the students liked it, see how, you know, teacher, so. Any other questions? All right. Then we will take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That also passes. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I got one more. Anybody? Nobody wants to go home?
Really?
I'll stay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. I have a motion by Jeff and a second by Tracy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
With that, meeting is adjourned as of 6:32. Thank you for your time. Drive home safely.